Welcome everybody, thank you for joining us today. My name is Troy Maskell, I'm with Goodwill. I will be hosting the Indeed webinar today focusing on resume, and most people know what a resume is. It's that thing that you need when you need to go get a job. So we're going to achieve these objectives today. We're going to be looking at creating an Indeed account, walk you through that. We're going to discuss the 5 steps of building a very powerful resume. We're also going to help you develop your own Indeed resume. Sounds exciting, right? So let's get started. So how are you going to find a job on Indeed? If you've ever been on Indeed before, it's a tremendously huge search engine. It's kind of like Google, except it's only geared towards finding jobs. So how are you going to have search criteria on here that's going to help you narrow down a job search of, let's say, 20 million jobs, which the last time we checked is what Indeed had live on there, all around the country, 20 million jobs. Can you imagine that? Sounds daunting to go through all that, right? So today you're going to get the training on how to do a specific job search and how to target the jobs that are related to your skill set. So get ready, here we go. We're planning to take off right now. So what does a job search look like? Well, there's a few steps. You have to make time to find a job, which is tremendously powerful. Lots of people don't realize that looking for work, finding a job is in itself a full-time job. Then you actually have to get good at searching, because if you get on Indeed with no training, you could be there for a while, because again, when you're looking at a pool of 20 million different jobs, you have to know the different techniques and criteria to make sure that you have a targeted search. Then there comes the application. This is where I see a lot of people get tripped up. And you know what I once heard from a recruiter is they make the application part of the job a little bit tedious. They want to test your patience and see just how patient you are before they call you and offer you an interview. So again, remember, the application part is a test. Then we have to focus on the interview. And again, this is where I see people struggle as well. If you've ever seen a show like American Idol or The Voice, you know that practicing what you're doing before you get up there is your one and only chance to make those judges' chairs spin around. And what I can tell you about the interview portion is I've seen people walk into an interview with their resume tucked under their arm without having rehearsed what they're going to say whatsoever. And you want to know what usually happens? They usually don't get a call back. So let's just say that you do your resume practice, you do some mock interviewing, you ace your interview, and then you get the offer. Congratulations, you've now got your job offer. So after that, then you have to focus on being able to start your position, making sure you're in the correct frame of mind, and making sure that you've set realistic expectations for yourself. So here's some insights for you. From an employer perspective, and what we mean by the employer is the recruiter that's actually looking to hire people. Did you know that there's over 100 discrete steps in the hiring process? Bet you didn't know that. So it's a very complicated process when employers looking to talk to you and actually do an interview with you. So you have to show them a little bit of appreciation, and you have to figure out how to make their job easier. So many employers face similar challenges. They lack the time to focus on hiring. They need to fill a role quickly. So it's your job as a job seeker to help make that recruiter's job a lot more simplified. And they'll appreciate it, and hopefully they'll make a job offer to you for being respectful to them. So Indeed, it's the #1 job site worldwide. 3 million companies right now are recruiting on Indeed. And like we said before, 20 million job postings right now are live as we speak. So again, our goal today is to get you some skills so that you can navigate Indeed, so that you can make efficient use of your time, because again, when you're looking for a job, it is a full-time job, and it's not an easy job. So let's get started. How would we create an Indeed account? Well, the best part about it is it's a lot like signing up for an email. If you've ever created an email account, whether you have a Gmail account, whether you have an Outlook account, whether you've signed up for a Netflix account, it's very similar. So what you're actually going to be doing is creating an account with your email address and using a unique password for Indeed. And if you look at what we're also showing you here, you also have the option to sign in with your Google account or to sign in with your Facebook account. And what I say about that, it's always one less username, one less password to remember, because there is no greater misery than a forgotten password. That's something that I tell all of my students in my career center, and also when I'm teaching my online classes and when I'm teaching my face-to-face classes. Don't forget your passwords. So again, very important. So you're going to go to Indeed. You can search that on Google. Once you get to the main landing page, you're actually going to select Indeed. You're going to be looking at a screen that looks a lot like what we're showing you here. Create your account, and again, you have 3 options. Sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, or give your email address and make your own unique password. So then how do you access your Indeed account? So do you already have one? Then all you have to do is sign in, and that's excellent. So we can practice with that today very easily. So again, you'll use your email address, enter your password, or sign in with Google or Facebook. So much beyond that, we're going to talk to you today about building an Indeed resume. The purpose of a resume is to present your most relevant skills. The purpose of a resume is kind of like it's a backstage pass, right? It's kind of that ticket that gets you on to American Idol or The Voice. So once you present that ticket at the door, they say, okay, you're here for the audition, we're going to let you sing. That's really what your resume does. So having a great resume is crucial to your success as a job seeker. So when you're on Indeed, you're going to see that you have 2 choices. If you have a resume that's already in a Word document or maybe even a PDF, you might want to just upload that to save yourself typing in massive amounts of data. However, maybe you don't have a resume. Maybe it was on a thumb drive that you lost. Maybe you'd just like to build a brand new one from scratch because maybe you're at a point now where you want to change industries or you're actually going to change professions. So you do have the option to, again, upload a resume that you already have, upload that content, or you can use the Indeed Resume Builder to build a brand new resume. So when you get your Indeed account, one of the first things that it's going to ask you to do is confirm your account. This is something that you should be familiar with from other types of websites and applications. They're always now trying to verify that it's actually you taking these actions on the internet. And what they'll do is they will send you a verification email with a verification code. In fact, I just did this morning. For the purposes of this webinar, I created a new Indeed account with my work email address for Goodwill. And it did send me a verification email, and I clicked on the purple button and I verified my email. And then it basically knew it was me and that I was using that for a legitimate purpose and that I may actually be looking for work. So your steps are, you want to open your email inbox, open the email from Indeed, look for the purple button, click on it, and you're going to be all set to go. So let's talk about the 5 steps to build your resume. Again, these are 5 crucial steps. So the elements and the steps of building your resume is you want to have clear contact information. This is like what I tell my job seekers. Make sure that your contact information is completely clear. Make sure that you have a current phone number on there. Make sure that you're using the correct email address. Make sure that you're checking your spam file, especially if you're expecting emails back from employers. If you've applied to jobs, maybe you've done some interviews, you're expecting some return communications. And the one most crucial thing that's linking to your resume on the contact information step, always answer your phone. I can't say that enough. I'm going to say it again with you. Say it with me, actually. Always answer your phone. And say, Troy, I swear I'm always going to answer my phone, because you know why? I actually was able to help out in our recruiting department recently, and I had to make some screening phone calls. And I saw some very qualified applicants. And guess what? When they didn't answer their phone, I moved right on to the next applicant. And I set up all the required amount of interviews. So once I left messages for those other people that didn't answer their phone, a few of them called back, and there were no more interview slots available. So when you're looking for work, always answer your phone. So your relevant education and certifications is a section on your resume that is directly related to why employers may want to hire you. Some jobs require a bachelor's degree. Some jobs require an associate's degree. Some jobs require a master's degree. Some super ultra professional jobs require a doctorate level degree. It just really all depends on what level you're at in your career path. And that's another thing that I want to point out to you too. When you're working with Goodwill and our partnership with Indeed, you're going to hear us throw around the term career pathway a lot. And really what that means is you start off at point A and point B, and Goodwill will help you at all the different points in between point A and point B to make sure you can get there as quickly as possible. So relevant education, definitely something you want to showcase, especially if it's directly related to the work that you're trying to do. So relevant work experience. This also includes volunteering. Yeah, I said volunteering, and I know a lot of people hear the volunteer word and they think, do I really have time to go donate my time for free? And what I can tell you is this, there's no better way to build resume content, especially if you're looking to get into a new industry or you're trying to highlight the experience that you have in an industry, than volunteering. And it also speaks to your heart, that you have a passion for a specific cause. Work experience is crucial as well. I would say it's probably the most crucial thing that you can put on your resume because, well, how can I say this? Would you get onto a plane with a pilot who said he had only flown in a flight simulator? Probably not. I probably would stay off that plane too. So employers are going to want to know that you're bringing value. And what I mean by the value is they're going to want to know that they're sitting in front of somebody that can actually do the job that they described in the job posting that they put up on Indeed. Makes a lot of sense, right? So you have to make sure that you're looking for relevant work that's directly related to the experience that you have. And if for some reason you're changing industries, you have to work on making sure that you know how to express transferable skill sets. And again, we have all sorts of things that we can talk about related to that. Come and see one of our navigators, one of our career advisors, and one of our career centers, and you can learn more about that as well. So relevant skills and your level of mastery. So this is something that you want to be able to explain in detail. You don't want to oversell yourself. Here's what I mean by that. You don't want to say that you know how to do basic computer coding if you have only been a help desk technician. Maybe some of the IT people out there will relate to what I'm saying. You don't want to oversell yourself and say that you can do things that you can't. Another thing that I might use an example for here is lots of employers are looking for bilingual employees right now. It seems to be a huge thing. So again, here we're in Arizona, so we're talking about being able to be conversational in Spanish, or maybe even being fluent in Spanish. So when you're talking about being fluent in Spanish, what that means is usually you're going to be able to read, write, and speak the language. Whereas conversational Spanish, you may just be able to speak. Some jobs, that's going to make a crucial difference. So again, you have to be very clear and make sure that you clarify what your experience level is, your mastery of your relevant skills. So then I think I saved the best for last. And what I mean by that is your summary statement is really the statement that goes on the top of your resume that makes employers want to read further. So anybody ever been to the doctor? I have. So when you're sitting there, or let's see, maybe even say anybody ever go to the dentist? I've been there too. But when you're sitting there in the waiting room and you're looking through all the magazines and you're trying to kill time, and I know many times now most of us look at our phone, what piques your interest? If you pick up a magazine and you start looking at the cover, sometimes you'll flip it around, you'll look at the pages, and you'll decide, is there an article here that I want to read? Maybe you'll start reading that article and go, that doesn't really sound too interesting. Then there's that one article you say, oh wow, that piques my interest. I'm really interested in that. And you read the whole thing. So really what I'm trying to communicate here is you want to make the summary statement at the top of your resume be that article that employers want to continue to read. How do you capture somebody's attention and gain their interest so that they have interest in you? So let's start with the top of the resume. This is actually, we're going to break out and do a little bit of practice. So we're going to be looking at the resume builder function here. So this is as if you're going to be building a resume from scratch. So really what you want to do is give employers a basic way to stay in contact with you. So number one, your first name, your last name, you're going to want to have an email address, a professional email address, something like your first name and your last name at Gmail, at Outlook, whatever your email might be. You want to make sure that you have a specific email that you've reserved for job searching that's ultra professional. You don't want to have those silly email addresses from 10 years ago showing up at the top of your resume because no one will take you seriously. It's always good too to make sure to put your city and your zip code. And I think about 10 years ago, most people would include their street address. That's something that's sort of gone by the wayside now. We live in a modern age where we're all trying to protect our privacy. So first name, last name, email, phone number, city, zip code. That would be my advice to you for this section. So let's go ahead and move on. Contact information example. Talk about your privacy settings. This is also related to what people can see about you inside the website. So who do you want to be able to see your resume? Do you want it to be live so recruiters can search you? That's one of the other secrets behind Indeed is recruiters actually pay for what they call resume searching on the back end, which means they can go in and look at basically a huge pile of resumes all at one time. Instead of waiting for people to apply to the postings that they have live, they can take a more active approach to recruiting, and maybe they find you and they reach out and say, hey, Troy, we've seen your qualifications and your capabilities. We would like to maybe discuss you coming to do this for us. So that's one of the things recruiters love about resume searching is when they have a niche position or maybe a position that's a little bit more challenging to fill, that then they can actually go on and use that feature to find people. So the public setting is going to allow everyone, all the recruiters again, to be able to see your resume. So if you set it to private, that's just going to mean that less people will have access to that. And more specifically, that's going to make sure that only you can see that. So again, the word private means that, again, that's your privacy. So if you're really working on your resume and maybe let's say that you're building it in stages, let's say that you go in and you really start working on your resume, you get it about half done. You don't really want that unfinished copy floating around on Indeed. You want to show them the masterpiece. You don't want to show them your resume being built, because then someone might resume search that and say, oh wow, he didn't even finish his resume. How great of an employee could he possibly be? He left this half-done piece of work up here. I was looking for a masterpiece. Does it make sense? Excellent. So let's go ahead and move forward. So the education portion. It looks a lot like the last section, right? Again, this is just a different section of the Indeed resume builder. This is the option that's going to allow you to enter all your education. I would say all your education details. So let's look at the top field, everybody. Degree, it's actually a drop-down menu. If you look on the far right, you're going to see an arrow. And when you click on that, it will give you a menu of options, whether that be a high school diploma, whether that be an associate level degree. Maybe you have a master's, maybe you have a bachelor's, maybe you even have a doctorate. Again, it's going to give you an opportunity to designate what degree level you have. It's going to ask you for the name of the school in the next field down. Again, you want to be very clear about where you went to school. The third field down, the field of study, what is your degree in? I mean, it makes a difference, especially if you're going to work in this particular field. If you were going to be an engineer, you wouldn't want to walk in and say, hey, I've got a communications degree, so I'm ready to build that bridge. They would say, well, you're probably not qualified to build a bridge. So below that, city, where's that school located? We want you to go ahead and put your cursor in there and designate the city where that school is located. And then they're also going to want to know what time period, how long ago did you graduate? And if you look at the bottom there, there's fields, your month, your year, everything that you need to know, or everything that you're going to want them to know, rather, about your education. So the second part of your education here, when you keep scrolling down, you're going to have a skills option on the top field. So if you have any specific skills that are related to your education, you're going to put those in there. You're going to, if you look to the far right, you're going to see you have a little plus sign. It's going to give you a list of skills that you can select. Below that, and the one that's highlighted right now, is certifications and licenses. Did you get a master's in counseling? Are you a licensed professional counselor? Could be. You could have some other certifications and licenses. Let's look at an RN, right? Some people are registered nurses, right? You have to have a bachelor's level degree nowadays to be a registered nurse. That's part of the registry. Any additional information that's going to be relevant to your education and your schooling that's going to matter for your employer, you really want to be sure that you're very, very thorough when you talk about it. So if you wanted to add that additional information, you're going to be clicking on the pencil. And that's set up like a lot of other websites. When you click on the pencil on the far right there, it's going to allow you to start editing. You can also add a section. Let's just say that you had some projects that you worked on where you actually have some web links where it leads people into those projects so they can see maybe like a virtual working portfolio. Let's just say that you had military service. Let's just say that you got some awards. Let's say you were given the key to the city. Let's say that you were recognized by one of your local news stations for being charitable to the homeless. These things all look awesome. So maybe you're published. Maybe you're a published author. Maybe you're a blogger and you have some published blogs. Maybe you have some recorded education content. You want to be sure that you put it all in there and include it all. Because again, you want to make yourself stand out. So let's talk about your work experience. Remember when I said before, this is probably the most crucial section of your resume? It lets employers know that you're actually going to be hireable. So when you're creating an Indeed an Indeed resume, your work experience, like I said, is probably the first thing people are going to be looking at. They'll read your summary statement, and then they'll basically skip right down to your work experience to see if you're hireable. So you're going to want your job title. Again, you would drop that right in that top field. They're going to want to know what company that you work for. They're going to want to know where it was. They're going to want to know how long you worked there. So these are all things that you need to consider, and you have to be very descriptive. And what I would recommend is when you find a job posting on Indeed, you want to make sure that you read that job posting 3 or 4 times before you actually build your resume. You want to make sure that you're targeting your resume. When you get to the part of the resume where you're actually talking about your job description and what you did, you want to make sure that you're targeting that towards your goal job at that goal employer. So again, we're going to be doing a demonstration here shortly where we're going to walk you through all these fields, but when you start to build out your resume and you get to the work experience section, this is what you're going to be seeing. So how do you present your experience? This is very challenging. One of the most challenging things about writing a resume is being able to talk about yourself. Has anybody ever asked you to write a bio, something about yourself, or maybe do an elevator speech about yourself? It can be awkward. It can make you feel strange. Getting to know yourself is the first step in being able to talk about yourself without panicking. Sometimes, I've seen very, very gifted public speakers that can walk into a room really of any size, full of as many people as there needs to be in there. I've seen people walk into a room of 30 or 40 people. It just seems like they're a fish in water. But you ask them about themselves and they freeze up. So this is one of the things that you want to be able to start to focus on when you're presenting your experience. So think about writing your resume so not only does it present well on paper, but think about it so that you can present it well in person when you get into that interview situation. So you want to avoid overused phrases and words. I'll give you an example. There's a word called synergy from the late 80s that people overuse, and I still see it on resumes today. Resumes are kind of like fashion. There's things that go in and out of style. So again, you want to make sure that you're looking up modern resume templates, modern ways to build the resume out, modern verbiage, so that you look like you're representative of the industry and that you're actually following the industry trends and you're on board with the modern age. You have to be able to show your soft skills. So what are soft skills? Soft skills are those things that aren't so easy to train people on. Soft skills are related to common sense. So example of a soft skill. If you're going to have, let's say you have 3 interviews set up. You do your first 2 interviews, you get a job offer on the second interview. You're supposed to call the person that's waiting for you at that 3rd interview to let them know that you're not going to make it. Because they set aside time out of their day, they're going to be sitting there twiddling their thumbs waiting for you, and if you're not polite enough or you don't have good soft skills, you may just blow that off and say, you know what, I got a job, that's all I care about, I just care about me. Meanwhile, that recruiter's sitting there going, where's Troy? So take the time to proofread. I can't stress this enough. When you're presenting your experience on your resume, you want to make sure that you get additional pairs of eyes on that. Don't just trust spell check in your own eyes. Once you've been spending the correct amount of time on a resume, and what I mean by this is, if you're doing your resume correctly, you're not going to be able to sit down and knock it out in 10 minutes. I mean, unless you're brand new out of high school and you almost have no work experience. But if you have 5-10 years work experience, I don't see any reason that you should be spending any less than 2 hours on your resume. Hopefully more. So what I mean by that is, you should be literally cross-eyed by the time that you're done working on your resume, if you've done it correctly. And then what I would do if I were you, I would find a friend, I would find a family member, I would say, hey, read through this. Does this come across okay? Am I saying what I want to say about myself? How do you feel about this? I guarantee you, I'll even make you a bet, someone's going to find a very silly mistake that you missed. Someone may also say, hey, this sounds vague, you might want to reword that. So you may have what you perceive to be a masterpiece in front of you, get someone to proofread it for you, and you may have some severe editing to make. But again, it's always better to get that feedback up front. So you want to use action verbs that really highlight your accomplishments. Words like achieved, accelerated, assembled, drove, handled, simplified, implemented, produced. People want to know what kind of value you're going to bring. You don't want a resume with a bunch of bullets in line that say responsible for this, responsible for that, responsible for this. I've seen that a lot. You want people to read your work experience and know that you're a capable, productive person that can move mountains if they need to. So really things that you want to focus on, make sure that you're using really, really powerful verbs on the fronts of all your statements, and get somebody to read it over for you. This is a perfect segue. I just talked about what they call a job hopper, someone who may have had, let's say, 3 jobs in the last year. That's always a very hard thing to discuss with a new employer, because that employer is going to be looking at you thinking, well, how do I know you're not going to be on to greener pastures here in 6 months? So again, it takes some of us a while to maybe find where we belong, to find our niche and find a good fit for us so that we can make a career move instead of just an employment move. So one of the things that I see plaguing people when they come into our career centers is gaps in employment. How do you constructively and professionally explain gaps in employment on your resume? And that's always been something recruiters are concerned with. If you had a 2-year gap in between, let's just say when you applied for the job that you're interviewing for, they're going to want to know where you were, what you were doing for that 2 years. They'll probably even going to want to know what that year gap was 2 or 3 jobs back. They're going to ask you to explain those things, so you need to be ready for that, and you need to practice these explanations so that you can flow when you're in the situation. So think about situations maybe with your family when you were a caretaker. You know, I had a sick relative. I had to take some time off. It was unplanned. Unforeseen circumstances happened. You know, I want to return to work. I'm ready to do that now. I've processed the situation, and I'm definitely out of that situation, and I'm ready to move forward with my career. Maybe if you were laid off, I was downsized. My company changed directions. And again, now since we're all in this current situation here in 2020, I've seen a lot of this. Lots of changes in the employment market. So being able to explain that to a recruiter in a professional manner, it's something that you need to practice. So you have to really be able to focus on that and make sure that you have very good, well thought out explanations. So, and again, sometimes it's beyond our control. There's just no money left. We had to reduce our staff. You have to explain that to a recruiter and be able to get them to really feel what you mean by that. Firing. What if you get fired? That's always an awkward one. It makes me feel awkward just standing here. I mean, even the word fired just, it kind of makes me cringe. So when you get fired, you have to be able to talk about what it is that you learned. Describe the situation between you and your employer. We just didn't really have the same vision. Maybe I could have seen some things differently. There's definitely some things that I learned from the situation that I could have done differently. And again, you have to frame that as positively as possible. So maybe you took some time off for personal reasons. Again, you have to be careful with this one, but I would say that being honest professionally is better than trying to embellish something. So maybe just say, hey, look, you know, I wanted to spend some time with my son. I felt like I was away too often. My wife pulled me aside and said, hey, you know, our son's missing you. And I was financially in a position to take, let's say, 6 months off. So I did. You just have to be honest. But again, you have to make sure that you have rehearsed this and you can be professional when you deliver these types of messages in your interview. So let's talk about adding some skills to the resume section in Indeed. So designated skills makes a lot of sense. So if you have skills, let's say that you're familiar with Microsoft Office, PowerPoint, Excel, Word, Outlook, all of those things. Let's just say that you're familiar with the Google Suite, Docs, Slides, Sheets. Let's just say that you know how to use Macs really well. Let's say that you work in video production, or maybe you work for marketing. You want to put that in there, that you're very familiar with Apple gear. Again, things that make you stand out and things that make you attractive to an employer. And you want to also put the amount of experience that you have. So let's just say that if I have If I had maybe 3 days experience flying a plane, probably not going to want to get on a plane with me, are you? Right? I've only been flying 3 days without my co-pilot, so let's go for a ride. No, Troy, no thank you. So again, you want to make sure that when you put your skills up there that there's actually a reasonable amount of time that you've been able to do those particular skills. Again, that's what makes you attractive to an employer. The summary, this is my favorite part. You have to give employers a quick idea of who you are. This is like what I was talking about earlier when you go into the doctor's office and you pick up that magazine, you pick up the first one, you're like, yeah, no. You pick up the next magazine, you're like, no. Pick up another magazine, you're like, ooh, this article looks good. I think I want to read this. That's what a summary statement does. It grabs somebody's attention. Once they read past your name and your email address and your phone number, they're going to need something that's going to grab their attention right away. So it's your job to come up with some very key phrases and be able to describe who you are and what you do in a creative manner. You don't want to go over the top and be silly or cute, but you do want to be profound. And what I mean by that is you want to find a series of words that really describe who you are, that really engages a reader. I was on LinkedIn the other day and saw a phrase that just made me go, wow, cultivator of culture. That's a really great phrase. That would be a really great way to start off a summary statement. And it just stuck with me for some reason. So that's what I'm getting at here. And again, don't be too clever, don't be too cute about it or be over creative. You want to be professional with it, but you want to come up with something that actually sticks with somebody and makes them want to continue to read forward. Does that make sense? So again, this is your first best chance, really your first only chance to get a recruiter to call you. Does it make sense? Excellent. Resume summary, here we have an example of it. You really want to come up with some creative ways to piece all this together. So, adjective, job title, number of years and experience, key accomplishments or responsibilities. So an adjective, creative, tenacious. I could go on and on and on. What are some other good adjectives? I mean, it's all up to you. It's your resume. But you want to make sure that it's professional and that it makes people want to read forward. That's why I always say when someone asks me, what do? I say, I'm a community superhero. That's not exactly an adjective, that's more of a phrase, but it really captures people's attention. They go, a community superhero? You're not wearing a cape? I say, well, I know I'm not really wearing a cape, but when you look at my job description, many people would describe what I do as being a community superhero. So again, start to think along those lines, start to get creative with it, and really start to think about who you are as an individual, really hone in on your unique skills, and focus in on what it means to be you. What does it really mean to be you? Here's some examples. Dedicated warehouse worker with 7+ years of experience in the shipping department. Responsibilities include customer service, picking and preparing items for shipment. I don't want to bore you by reading further. I know everybody here can read. What I'm saying is, make sure that you can concisely fit your skill set into a small section on the top of your resume that's directly related to why that employer might want to hire you. And again, I really like this, but again, remember to be yourself. Try to make something about your resume summary really speak to who you are. It'll make you stand out. And again, you'll always want to have somebody proofread it and make sure it comes across correctly, but think about being profound. Think about making yourself stand out from the crowd. It's what's going to get you that interview and potentially get you hired. We have one down below here, high energy, bilingual nursing student, seeking to develop more extensive experience. I already want to read further. Does it make sense? I already want to read more. High energy. I want to be around people who are high energy and I want them on my team. So do you see what I mean? So this all makes perfect sense. So let's review your resume. Creating your best resume takes time, but it's time well invested. Welcome to your Indeed resume. So once you get your online resume done, guess what you can do? You can have it reviewed. Seriously, it works. Let's take a look. You can download your resume. You can download that into a PDF file so that you can send it via email, so that you can upload it into other different types of job searches. Let's just say that you maybe have some friends and family that are helping you with the job search and they find a good lead for you. You can take the resume that you built in Indeed, turn it into a document that you can attach to an email and forward it on. So notice that your Indeed resume is already formatted for you. And the way they format it with Indeed allows it to be transferable. And what I mean by that is you can email it around without having the formatting messed up. Anybody who's ever tried to copy and paste the content from a resume into an email body knows that your formatting can go completely south. And what I mean by that is nothing lines up anymore and you look and you're like, oh, that's a mess. I can't send that. So again, when you get your resume downloaded from Indeed, you can use it to attach to any type of emails and anything else you might need to do with it. So again, it's a very powerful feature. Let's talk about some additional resources. MyCareerAdvisor.com. If you've never heard of this before, you have to check it out. MyCareerAdvisor.com. It's a virtual career center. It has a ton of tremendously powerful tools on the inside for your use. Again, I want to thank you for your time today. We certainly appreciate you choosing Indeed and Goodwill to help you in your search for a new job. Thank you again.